Hello, my name is Alexander Borschel, and I'm going to be telling you my personal story of how I used martial arts to overcome alcoholism. When I was younger, I suffered from a relatively negative past, and this seemed to have carried over into my early 20s. Um, I began to use pills in college, and I used to do so many different kinds of, not extreme drugs, but the worst of them all was falling into the pit of alcoholism. And I admit I got to a point where I would spend every last penny to get alcohol and get drunk. And it hurt me. Um, to this day, I've developed a kind of intolerance to alcohol. It actually developed after I stopped, interestingly. And now when I drink, I get extremely nauseous. So that's a plus. But I gave up alcohol before that. I found that out the hard way when someone switched a drink on me and I accidentally drank vodka. And I was just absolutely in agony for like the next day. Even went to the hospital. It was so painful. So my body now rejects it. And this only happened after I began to wrap my mind around that I no longer needed this in my life to deal with the problems that I had. Um, my story effectively begins falling radically ill, grossly ill to a flu, and I almost died from it. Um, in fact, it was so bad and no one would help me. And on top of that, I broke my phone, so I couldn't contact anyone. So when I say no one would help me, that means the people I lived with wouldn't even let me borrow their phone to call an ambulance. And I couldn't leave the house. So I resigned to die in the bathtub. I passed out, and the next thing I know, it's 3 days later, and I'm in the emergency ward, hooked up, and for all I know, I was out of it for days. Um, and preceding that with the illness, there was hallucinations and all sorts of other really negative things. At one point, I was just throwing up blood, so I apologize for the graphicness of this. Things were very serious for me. I woke up in the emergency ward, IV attached to me, and I spent the next week in a emergency detox facility because my parents believed that this was caused by drinking. Now, it wasn't, but I did have a problem. And from there, it was bouncing from rehab to rehab in Virginia and then respectively in Bel Air. And I learned quite a few things. Like, the opposite of addiction is not sobriety, it's being included in the community and being a part of it. A lot of people feel this disconnect in their lives, and this causes them to self harm in many ways. Uh, Today, I have been sober for about 4 years. I'm very proud of this. Since the day that I resigned to stop, I've never had the urge to even do it, even when it's been put in front of me. The one time I have had alcohol was because I thought it was water in the cup of water I had, and they placed the vodka next to it. So I slammed the water down, and it wasn't water, and I got very ill. And I'm actually rather proud of this because it means that my mind has absolutely committed to never doing this again. And what caused this was not necessarily the rehab I went through. I love the people I met, but my issue with drugs was not that I was an addict. Even calling myself an alcoholic is difficult because if you put a thing of beer in front of me, I don't have that impetus to drink. I didn't work that way. And they have a kind of gauging system to tell where you are as an alcoholic or drug addict and things like that. And if this is the line, I was towing it. So I definitely needed to pursue help. And as a martial artist, you have to be a fool to think that you can do everything yourself. It's just fact of the matter. We have teachers for a reason. We came from somewhere. We didn't spontaneously exist. So while I went to the AA meetings and the Marijuana Anonymous and Narcotics Anonymous, and I met very many people who were going through this massive struggle, um, I turned further inward because I felt alone. I was cut off from much of my family as I went to recover, and it was only towards the end that I was allowed by my family to reconnect. This was a large reason that I decided to go with the flow and pursue this rehab. I was willing to admit, honestly, that I had a issue. And that's the first step, is the honesty. And the next step is the confidence that you can overcome it, even if you don't know how you're going to overcome it. And in my case, I did this by practicing martial arts again. It had been about, I admit, while I was drinking, I was on and off on it. I came up with some pretty cool techniques and I did improve overall, but at the same time, I was abusing and I was self destructive and I was ruining my life. And the people around me were either dying from their own drug use or because of their poor choices and perhaps even my own in our lifestyle, we began to fall into conflict. So I was cut off from everyone that I knew had ever known, really, and had to kind of reconsider who I was and all that. And part of that was realizing that the one thing that ever brought me real peace in my life, ignoring the child abuse, ignoring friends who killed themselves, ignoring friends who were murdered, ignoring teachers I cared about dying, my family falling apart. I was at peace as long as I did martial arts, as long as I could do the techniques as best as I could, perfectly as I could. I was at peace. And so every morning I would wake up well before the others, hours before even dawn rose, and I would practice for hour after hour after hour every day. I would take part in the community. I got a job, like they asked, in this program, and I worked, and I graduated with flying colors. There was drama in it, and there were setbacks, but since the day that I resolved never to do it again, that indomitable spirit that we cultivate in martial arts can be channeled not necessarily as willpower, because it doesn't really work like that with a disease. You can't, or a disorder, you can't will yourself to not have cancer, you can't will yourself to not have the flu, you can't will yourself to not be depressed, you cannot will yourself to not be disconnected, but you can will yourself to begin to make changes that can address those things. And I did that. I cut out people who were problematic in my life and were leading me down a bad path. And by turning inward in the martial arts, I was able to find my center and to overcome that addiction. I would then go on to volunteer in Israel, teaching English to both Israelis and to Bedouins and Arabs. And I truly believe that my experiences in overcoming this have enabled me to better understand not only the disease, but how to approach others with their own issues. Because a big part of this was listening and learning to put yourself in the absolute highest state of empathy you can so that you can be there for others, because they're there for you to help you succeed. Now, I'm in Israel, and AA is not a big thing here. The only AA groups around me speak Russian. So, at the same time, it's kind of difficult when you're on your own and you're used to those kind of programs. But because of martial arts, I've been able to remain centered. And because of this, this allows me to improve myself. This allows me to not fall back on those bad habits that were poisoning my life. And martial arts allowed me to do this because every time I would panic, every time I would feel low, every time so on and so forth, I would remind myself of what I'm capable of doing, what I have done. And that self-confidence is what allowed me to overcome any kind of self-doubt in all of this. Because it's so easy when people are telling you that you're sick to believe them that it's either as serious as they're describing or even worse. When your life is falling apart and you turn to any kind of means to distract yourself or to numb the pain, it is problematic. And a depressed martial artist is not a very good one. So I resigned myself to scale my techniques back up into a way that I can be in shape. And this is what's kept me strong through it. Helping others, being a part of the community, and martial arts improving myself was what allowed me to overcome that addiction. And I'm proud of myself for that. It's been years since I have had a drink, and I have no intention to have one pretty much ever again in my life. And I believe everybody can do this, but I don't believe it's tied exactly to willpower. Since I decided not to drink, I have not gone back to it. But that doesn't change the fact that I went through multiple rehabs to get to that point. But throughout that entire rehab process, it wasn't the group therapy that worked. It was the 4 to 6 hours I spent every morning practicing. And this brought me back, like I said, to that core. And from there, I could actually begin to build on it in a effective way. I did this by coming to Israel so that I could do as much good as possible. Because as I've noticed in life, the more good you do for others, for everyone, if possible, it has a feedback to help you as well, to grow and to continue to do good, more good. So I just want to thank you guys for watching. I hope my story will help others who are experiencing substance issues and have not yet considered how martial arts can help them. There's a reason that people reach for drink in that kind of manner, and martial arts allows you to discipline yourself so that you can acknowledge it and then find healthy ways to deal with those issues. For me, it's doing like 100 push-ups when I'm upset. For me, it's making a video like this so that I can connect with the people who I care about, or the people I've yet to meet who I will care about. So I hope this helps, and I appreciate you guys for listening, and I hope that anybody who's going through this knows that they can contact me at any time. My name is Alexander Borschel on Facebook, and I'm very open to speaking with people. I run a suicide prevention page, and I'm very, I care a lot. I lost my best friend to this kind of malady of the mind that can bring us so low that we forget everything that we actually have and can do. And I want people to know that no matter how bad it gets, there's always that light at the end of the tunnel. And martial arts is fantastic for bringing me to that light. When our lives hit rock bottom, that's the time where we can truly build something new and beautiful. Destruction often leads to creation. So, philosophy aside, thank you guys for listening, and I hope you have a wonderful time. Best of luck to everyone who's on that journey. It's hard, but you're not alone. Bye.